So today I'm going to be sharing a story that was actually one that I'm familiar with from my youth. There's a family member, I'm not going to tell what their name is just for their own privacy. It's a terrifying story, it's an epic story. It was mailed into me, happened many years ago, but instead of reading off of it, I'm just going to tell you now what happened. So it was in the late 80s, and this person, we'll call them Mark, was very excited to be going on a overnight uh, backpacking trip, which he often did solo trips, was living in the Tri Cities in Washington and liked to frequent the Oregon coast. And so one summer there was a heat wave in the Tri Cities. It gets very hot. Like oftentimes it will get, 90 over 100 degrees in some of the heat waves. And there was a heat wave going on. And so Mark decided that, you know what, I'm going to pack up my car, go over to the Oregon coast, and I'm going to have a one night overnight backpacking trip in the Tillamook National Forest. The Tillamook National Forest is this gorgeous area with tons of streams, mountains, just right on the coast. And so and from the Tri-Cities over there, it's a few hours, but he just decided, you know what, I'm just going to leave right after work. I'll be all packed and ready to go. And so he started driving from the Tri-Cities over to the coast. Very hot, but he was just so happy and so excited because even though back in those days the weather forecasts weren't like just looking at your phone and seeing what the temperatures were going to be like, but he knew from past experiences that the Oregon coast was very pleasant. So he was expecting you know upper 60s, 70s, just beautiful, beautiful days. And so these were the thoughts he was having as he was driving over there. Once he got to the area where the road started to twist and wind its way up into the mountains, he just started kind of keeping a sharp eye out for where he was going to camp out for the night. He didn't really have a plan. He was just flying by the seat of his pants. His idea was that he would find a place to spend the night in his car, get up, and just figure out what he was going to do. But then he was going to hike from there. So, like I said, he got off work, drove over, and so the light was definitely starting to get a little bit more twilight like as he's getting up on this dirt road. And the way he always told the story was, and I was coming around the corner, and there in the middle of the road was Bigfoot. And then he just laughs and says, "Just kidding. There wasn't Bigfoot. He's just being silly." But anyways, he finds this wide spot off on the side of the road, like a turnoff, overlooking this huge valley. And he pulled over and shut his car off and had a quick bite to eat. He brought some food and then just set up camp, which in this case was just a matter of pulling his sleeping bag over his legs and trying to get some sleep, which he did. In the morning, there was a bunch of like condensation. He could tell that it had obviously rained overnight, but he looked up at the sky and it was like those fluffy clouds with a bright blue. He could just tell us this is going to be a great day. So he got back in his car and started driving further up the road. And then at the end of this dirt road that he was on, it ended in those big. You've probably seen it if you've explored Forest Service roads where they're like they don't want you to go further down the road, so they put huge boulders to block the path. The road doesn't end, but they put these boulders just right in your way. But that's where Mark decided to park his car, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to follow this road deep into the wilderness, and that's what I'm going to do. So he parked his car. He grabbed his backpack, which was relatively light because it just was food, clothes for a one night thing, and he started hiking back on this road. As he was hiking, he was just taking in all the beautiful views. He would seamlessly go from plots of land that were recently logged and then into more mature timber, just back and forth, and just these amazing views would he get into the logged spots. And as he went, he just was caught up in the moment of being by himself and having a slower pace of life. And so, not a slower pace of life, but just like kind of in this element of just being out in nature and just taking it all in. And so as he hiked, he at some point, a few hours down the line, stopped to have some lunch. And his water bottles were getting a little bit low. And so he decided that next time he came to a creek, he was going to stop and use his filtration system to fill his water bottles. So as he hiked, he could kind of hear like a stream up ahead. So he was hiking along the road and it was down below him quite a ways. and it had kind of like that loose sand and rock, but it was really steep. And you know, like when you step and you kind of slide down because the sand and the rocks are so loose, it was like that, he describes it. And as Mark kind of sidestepped, 1 foot down, lower slide, all the way down to this creek bottom, he was able to drop his filtration system into this little creek and refill his water bottles. As he was doing that, he noticed this really horrendous smell, just this really gross. He described it as being almost like trash or rancid. And it's just like, it wasn't like that initially. And then it got that way and it got really quiet. And he saw something move out of the corner of his eye and he turned and looked, and there's just this flash of movement, but he couldn't tell exactly what it was. But it freaked him out a lot, and so he quickly gathered his stuff up and he just scrambled back up onto the road. And as soon as he did, he turned and looked back down to see if he could see anything, and he didn't see anything at all. And so the way he tells us is that the spirit of camping is completely out of his mind. He has no idea what he wants, that, he has no interest in camping anymore. And remember, this was after lunch. And so he got started early in the morning. So he's like 7 hours away from his car. I mean, granted, he was taking his time and now he's going to be like going a lot quicker, but this is a long ways from his car. So he packs up all of his stuff and just starts speed walking and just checking over his shoulder, all the time. And he isn't seeing anything. But then, like, as soon as he gets a little ways from it, he kind of stops and catches his breath a little bit. And this rock goes whizzing right past his head. And he just turns and he's not seeing anything, but he can hear something moving in the bush. So he takes off running down the road. And he runs for a few minutes and just has to stop and catch his breath. And then there's nothing. And he starts walking again. And he stops to take a break. And once again, a rock comes, lobbed his general direction, and just skids across the ground. This one's not as close as that first one, but comes like by him, hitting the ground. And he just starts running again. And he doesn't stop. He's not running the whole way, but he just keeps looking over his shoulder. And he has this terror of whatever this thing can throw rocks, and the message is clear. This is my territory now, and you are not welcome in it. And he just books it all the way back to his car. And he says it did not take as much time to get back to the car as it did to get back out to where he was. That's for sure. He only did it. So it took him 7 hours to get out and it took him about 4.5 to get back to his car, just to give you some perspective there. But he gets back to his car, throws his stuff in the back seat, slams the door, turns the car on, and just goes back down into town and just like has this moment of just, what just happened to me? What was that? And so he goes to a payphone, calls his wife, says, I'm not sure what happened, but I'm not camping tonight. And so I'm going to be started to head back home. I'm okay, but I'm going to find a place to sleep for the night and I'll be home tomorrow. And so he just drives and sleeps in a rest area somewhere along the way home. And he goes back. And Mark describes that he's done a lot of hiking since. He's done even a lot of overnights, but he's never gone back to the Tillamook National Forest. And to this day, it still haunts him. So that's the story of Mark. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any scary stories that you want to send, feel free to let me know about them. But otherwise, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks. Bye.